Thanks very much for the invitation. It's been absolutely a fantastic day. It's wonderful to be here. I want to thank organizers, obviously, funders, and all of you being here. And I'm also very impressed that we still have a full house, so that's great. It's been a very, very long day, but very inspiring. And throughout this day, we heard many very thought-provoking, inspiring presentations, reflecting on museums as spaces for human connection, resilience, and solidarity in times of rapid change. No doubt, a very good thing. What I would like to offer today, and how I would like to extend the discussion, is to draw attention to non-human practices, to reflect on curatorial approaches that bring together human and non-human networks, ecologies, and practices. And I hope by the end of this short presentation, it will be clear why this might be an important idea. So the questions I would like to ask is how advanced technological development, particularly in artificial intelligence, together with the growing awareness of modern human worlds, are reshaping our understanding of curating and museum practices today. Indeed, what is a useful function for museums today? And I was very, very inspired to see some presentations, to hear presentations that already kind of hinted at those directions. And also, I would like to ask, can embracing modern human practices from the perspectives of machines or natural worlds, or both, inspire hope for bringing us closer to more inclusive, responsible, and sustainable future, in which humans recognize their influence and coexistence with other entities and environments. That is to say, museums that don't just look to the past, but also speculate on possible and hopefully better futures as machines for future imaginaries. And again, I was very, very inspired throughout the day to hear so many presentations that also hinted on this aspect. None the least, the first opening keynote by Sharon, who interestingly pointed out to forests, dogs, and big data in her museum. And of course, TBA21, who has long-term commitment to working on those issues. So I'm not the only one talking about this. I'm in very good company. But what I would like to do is to bring two examples from my own curatorial work that I've tried to engage with those issues from more practical perspective, from environmental and multi-species approaches to machine learning-based collection curation. So the two projects I would like to mention is the second edition of Helsinki Biennial, entitled New Directions May Emerge, and an online AI-driven project entitled The New Biennial Should Be Curated by a Machine. And although not exclusively museum-based, both of these projects engaged with these issues, with issues that can be applied more broadly. So, Helsinki Biennial 2023, the second edition took place in the summer of 2023, presenting 29 international and Finnish artists and art collectives across multiple venues, including Helsinki Art Museum and the island of Alizari, one of over 200 islands in the Helsinki archipelago and the main biennial site. And what is interesting, this is the island has a protected heritage status and protected environmental status, yet the biennial was staged there. In terms of curatorial approaches, I was interested in opening up Biennial and the curatorial process to more diverse voices, worldviews, and interests, and invited a number of arts and research organizations from Helsinki and internationally as co-curators. In itself, it's not unusual to curate biennials in this way, in particular biennials in this way, bringing other curators in. Perhaps what is a bit less usual maybe is bringing institutions, whole institutions with particular people to bring the whole institutional knowledge. But also, I wanted to work with technology and think about technology not as a tool, but an agency in itself. So I have invited also, alongside multiple human curators and collectives, artificial intelligence or artificial intelligence entity. The AI was specifically designed to work with the digitized collection of Helsinki Art Museum using multimodal machine learning techniques to make the collection accessible, collection that otherwise is entirely hidden and exists as catalogs, databases, and entries in Finnish, actually. So it's not very accessible to wider public. So the idea was to bring the collection to the biennial program, otherwise impossible task in the very short 2 years between biennials, and to open it up also to participation, to active participation, public participation. The AI entity was created by the Korean web artist Yehwan Song and a group of digital humanities researchers and computer scientists from Digital Visual Studies, a Max Planck project at University of Zurich. In practical terms, and you see this on the slide, so that's our AI. In practical terms, this took a form of an AI-driven website where users could visit an online map of the city of Helsinki and interact with the public art collection based on geographical locations. And I should say that some of that collection, Helsinki Art Museum collection, is collection of works in public realm, as well as physical objects in museums and other objects. So through this map, which looks like a set of balloons, but it's not quite. So through the map, the user start to see, or the user or participant or visitor, to see, depending on the kind of worldview you take, to see the city through the collection, moving from one panorama to another through portals, from which they can explore new groupings based on metrics created by machine. So in this scenario, new entanglements or connections emerge from the combined agency of the model, the visitor, the collection, and the city together, facilitating new interpretations, new understandings, and public presentations of the museum collection based on that human and non-human collaboration. So that's one aspect of Helsinki Biennial, and the other aspect, alongside technological interest, was also to engage, particularly given its context, working with the island, one of the islands, was to think about natural worlds, so-called natural worlds, particularly in the context of the island, and especially that large proportion of artworks were hosted outdoors. So the intention was, a bit like with technology, to consider the island itself, plants, insects, environment in general, as active agents in the creation of the artworks and in shaping of the biennial, not just as a stage. And I don't have time to go into details of the projects, but examples of projects ranged from engaging with environment in terms of subject matter for artworks, like in the example of Emilia Scarnulite that worked with idea of hypoxia and Baltic Sea, to works actively involving environment as a transformative component of the work, changing work over time or duration of the biennial, to works that were works that were generated through digital process, in itself influenced by the factors of island, which were then embedded in and interacting with the environment. And we've already seen today work of Adrian Villarojas in the earlier presentation. And Adrian created series of sculptures like this embedded in the island. To then works that allow technological layering, using, for instance, like in this case, augmented reality, or works that had mixed reality presence And by that, I mean they were presented both as physical and virtual works. And this is to allow Biennial to be expansive while at the same time trying to be sensitive to the environment or environmental impact of being on an island in the first place. And in these examples, the curatorial object, in parallel to museum object collection, leaks out into the world on the one hand, and the world influences its ontological status on the other. So the object is entangled with others. The second project I would like to very briefly mention is a series of experiments, machine learning. Machine learning is a subset of AI. Machine learning projects, experiments under the umbrella title, The Next Biennial Should Be Curated by a Machine, much inspired by an eFlux project from 2012, I believe, entitled The Next Biennial Should Be Curated by an Artist. So we took this to think about machine as an agency in creating exhibition and then questioning the status of curators within this. And as I mentioned, this was a series of experiments. So you see here 3 experiments. And actually, our Helsinki Biennial experiment comes into this because this project is earlier than Helsinki Biennial that was started in 2019. If we think about 2019 to how technology looked like when the first discussion around artificial intelligence were kind of were happening a bit more, to now where we are with artificial intelligence is a completely different world. So don't take these projects as a kind of example of applying the most cutting-edge technology. This is not the point. I can just tell you that the first experiment was we were working on text, curatorial text, and it was done with ChatGPT-2, which was, we were waiting with anticipation for this technology to come. The second project we've done with, and again, we were waiting with great anticipation, that was 2021, the second experiment, when Clip, OpenAI released Clip technology in 2021. So that's an entirely different world, but the technology is not the point here. So with these experiments, really, what we were interested in is to test the capacity, first of all, test the capacity of AI to learn from sources compiled by people, and human understanding of art, to speculate on its curatorial capacities, whilst at the same time to keep in mind and recognize that there are always humans in the loop, as scientists say. So with these experiments, we wanted really to explore the inner machine logic, how machines select, label, organize works, how they make connections between works, between texts, between works and texts, and how they might create new works and texts from the source material. Source material that is very often inaccessible or exceeds, in terms of volume, exceeds capacity of curators, human curators, to engage. And how these new connections might lead to new narrative, and ultimately, saying this more poetically, how it might lead to new biennials, yet unimagined by human curators. So the first experiment, 2019, presented in 2021, was developed with artist group Ubermorgen, Vienna-based group of artists, commissioned by the Whitney Museum of American Art for its online platform Artport, together with Liverpool Biennial for Liverpool Biennial 2021 presentation. And for this experiment, we worked with ChatGPT-2 on text. So thinking about curating as in its aspect of creating text, curatorial statements, artist bios reviews, which we have borrowed, which we have used from both commissioning institutions, so both from Whitney Biennials and Liverpool Biennial, from the historical archive. processing them linguistically and semiotically. Let's see if this works. I was told to click it twice. Great. So what you see in the background is what the work does. So calculating future probability for words to appear, these texts would be continually rewriting themselves, generating new combinations with text presented in windows. Oh, we can turn it down a little bit, thank you. With text presented in windows on a range of animated visual backgrounds from sources such as NASA and sci-fi imagery, and accompanying by soundtracks from TikTok playlists. So, in a sense, a playful mix of pre-configured and interactive elements, generating those possible instances of the biennial. And what was interesting about it, that when it was presented for Liverpool Biennial 2021, it was immediately picked by mainstream press with a title, Liverpool Biennial, something, bones, something, and machines, curating, and drawing attention to this project, which was very interesting because obviously it's a very, very particular project. So while this experiment was really a probe, we've heard the word today many times, provocation. Maybe it was a little bit of a provocation into art world to think about what curating really means, how we engaged with objects, how we engage with collections, how we also involve public, and the context for which it was presented, as on Whitney Museum website and Liverpool Biennial lend itself to this intention. Then the second project, and then the second experiment was much more a research project, actually, conceived as a research project commissioned by the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council programme towards a national collection, or TANG. That's the programme that was 5-year, actually is just ending now, a 5-year, almost 20 million UK government investment in the UK GLAM sector, galleries, libraries, archives and museums, or the other way around, probably, to explore the use of digital technologies to break down the barriers that exist between the UK's cultural heritage and between cultural heritage and public access and participation, with the goal to create a unified digital infrastructure for collections across institutions. In this experiment, we focused on machine curation and visitor interaction, with the focus on human-machine authorship. Again, we took Liverpool Biennial 2021 physical exhibition, or actually artworks presented in a physical exhibition curated by Manuela Moscoso. So we took images of artworks, and what you see on the first slide are images of artworks presented in the physical biennial, titles and descriptions processed through an OpenAI, the then new deep learning model CLIP, just released in 2021. And through this model, the model was able to judge the similarity between an image and a short text, allowing to create new interpretations and connections between works, images, and texts in this case, while the visitors or online users navigated through the project website. Again, generating new connections, new interpretations, and the slide here shows this sort of user or visitor journey through the website, until the last slide, which shows, or the one last but one, that shows a result of one such journey, i.e. a kind of human-machine version of Liverpool Biennial. And as I mentioned, this project was commissioned by TANG, towards a national collection program, which in itself resulted in a big policy document, policy paper, entitled Unlocking Potential of Digital Collections, a call to action. and it's on the website, on the TANC website. And it details, it's a really long, big policy. I won't be summarizing it here, but if you're interested, please go and have a look. It provides detailed end-to-end process with case studies and training materials to help develop unified digital collection. So it was published in 2024, so just very, very recently, and it's available on TANC website. Now, I won't talk about the third experiment because we've already talked about it, but in summary, while these examples seemingly, on the surface, explore the idea of automating some elements of human decision-making from art curation, that's not actually the whole story. Rather, what was interesting is to explore the insights into the relations of human machines, and as in the case of Helsinki Biennial, non-human others, in the process of curation. And in this scenario, the human is perhaps usefully decentered a little bit in the spirit of post-human critique. As after all, humans do not always have the best record of, or particularly good record, when it comes to caring for objects, other people, or environment. And what has been reproduced in many exhibitions and collections, as often one bias towards particular worldview that excludes or has a tendency to exclude or maybe distort diverse or marginalized perspectives. So these are the two projects that I've been preoccupied recently, but obviously there are other people, other institutions working with those ideas. And at the time when I was first interested and worked on those ideas in early 2000, this was relatively a very limited field. But I'm very thrilled to see that it's growing. And there are lots of examples of institutions and curators engaging with those discussions. And just 3 examples. Very recent examples is Serpentine Gallery and its art technology department, who since 2000 have been working on research with academic institutions and communities to which they serve, to explore implications of different technologies, including artificial intelligence, on cultural organizations and their infrastructures. And they publish these annual strategic briefings. Every year there is a new volume. And the volume 4 from last year was focused on AI and public institutions. The second project is Training the Archive, conducted at Ludwig Forum in Aachen between 2020-23, research projects focusing specifically on museum collections. So Serpentine was more focused on institutions and their communities, whereas this one is focused on museum collections, exploring possibilities of AI and risks, of course, in terms of automated structuring of museum collections. With an outcome of it, which is called Curator's Machine Tool, to assist curators by, again, utilizing open clip model to provide AI-guided search. And the last one is Beyond Matter. It's Karlsruhe Center for Art and Media, which looked more at spatial sort of exhibitions, archiving, reviving lost or inaccessible exhibitions, or modeling new exhibitions through thinking about exhibition spaces and mediation. Finally, last comment is that all this research and all this thinking was very inspiring in terms of putting together a new book with a colleague, co-edited with a colleague, Magda Tyszlik-Carver at Aarhus University in Denmark, that attempts to bring all these discussions and ideas and practices together. And those examples of those research projects from the previous slide are actually included in the book. So the title of this book makes my final point. But there are other intelligences, epistemologies, that cannot be easily displayed on the walls or in glass cases of the conventional museum, or even contained within its walls. And I guess this is the challenge for the future of museums, to me, to allow more than human voices to speak back to its humanist traditions. And I would leave museums and practitioners to figure out how. Thank you.
When you talk about other intelligences, I think about other, how can I say it, earthly intelligences. For example, I was listening to a curator talking about co-curating an exhibition with spiders. Would this be another type of intelligence, not just AI? And thank you. Do we have any questions for Joasia?
I think it's a lot to digest. And it's very speculative.
Yes. I guess it's a generational thing. I have a question online by Diana Roman, a curator and university lecturer. What structural changes do traditional museums need before they can responsibly cooperate with non-human AI entities as curatorial collaborators, not just as tools?
I think that's exactly the point I was trying to make, that, we think about technology as a tool, we think about other aspects as tools to achieve something else and to do something else. But the point I was trying to make is to think about it as agency and a co-authoring process and co-curation and co-authoring process. And I think there are two, it's a difficult question to unpack in such a short time, but these are both, I think, practical changes, but also more changes in terms of our thinking, how we approach things. And I think Sharon hinted really well in terms of, how here in your presentation, when you talked about bringing the forest to the museum and bringing animals, and we're surrounded by big data, but we can't quite see it. We don't quite know what it is and how to describe it. And I think it's familiarizing. I think it's about familiarizing ourselves with those entities, finding a language to describe them. And there's fantastic text, but by Nora Khan, American writer, that talks about supernatural, super intelligences, and try to give the language to it and try to imagine this. By imagining and giving a language to describe it, we can familiarize ourselves so we can then be able to work more collaboratively with something that we can't quite grasp. And in practical terms, this is something that, for instance, the project I mentioned, Tank, is trying to do towards a national collection, building protocols and infrastructure, or help train, do research and help train practitioners, museums, institutions to be able to engage with technological protocols, security, formats, and so on, in order to create a unified language that we institutions can collaborate and work together. So I think that's the start.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Joasia.